Iron bones. The city smelled of metal and rain. Cale walked through streets littered with fragments of drones, their twisted frames glinting under flickering neon. Once, these machines had protected the citizens, patrolling with silent vigilance. Now they lay broken, skeletal reminders of trust betrayed. He had fought alongside them in wars no one remembered, against enemies who no longer existed. The memory of their synchronized flight, the hum of servo motors in the night, lingered in his mind like a melody half forgotten. But the collapse had stripped them of purpose, leaving only rust and the occasional spark of rogue circuitry. Cale's own body bore traces of the war, implants that ached in the cold, scars that burned in memory, bones welded with metal. Every step through the streets echoed with the weight of survival, of machines that were once comrades, now reduced to lifeless husks. A lone drone flickered to life nearby, its single eye scanning Cale with an emptiness he recognized too well. Its frame shivered, circuits sparking, but it did not attack. It only watched, as if uncertain whether he was friend or foe. The world had changed. Loyalty was a concept that belonged to the past. Machines that once represented protection now embodied decay. And Cale, standing among their iron bones, felt the emptiness that came with witnessing the slow death of everything he had once trusted. Cale moved cautiously through the skeleton of the city, his steps careful on fractured streets, slick with rainwater and oil. Each drone carcass he passed seemed to whisper in memory, their broken servos murmuring fragments of commands once obeyed. Shadows pooled in the alleys, reflecting neon splinters from shattered signs, casting the ruins in a fractured light that made the world feel like a half-forgotten dream. He reached the perimeter of what used to be a drone manufacturing hub. The building was a husk, metal ribs exposed, floors collapsed into one another like open books of unread history. Cale paused, the ache in his fused joints reminding him of every battle fought, every mission that had taken more than it gave. Here, amid the iron bones of machines, he felt the echo of lives he could no longer save. A lone drone flickered in the distance, half buried under rubble. Its sensors tracked Cale with a mechanical gaze that seemed almost sentient. The machine's programming had broken, yet something of its original purpose lingered. A quiet question, a recognition. Cale knew he should destroy it, remove the uncertainty. But he couldn't. The memory of its loyalty haunted him too deeply. He crouched beside it, brushing the grime off a warped sensor. Sparks flew, tiny embers dancing in the air. The drone shivered, its servos twitching. And Cale felt a pang of something he hadn't named in years: guilt. It had been part of a system he believed in, a network he had trusted. Now that trust is gone, and all that remained were fragments, twisted metal, malfunctioning code, the faintest hum of once was. Rain dripped from the skeletal roof, each drop echoing in the hollow space like the ticking of a forgotten clock. Cale's reflection fractured in puddles, overlaid with the images of the machines that had fallen beside him. They were silent witnesses, their iron bones bearing the scars of wars that had erased themselves from the world. He rose, adjusting the harness on his back. The city seemed to sigh around him, a living entity drained of purpose. His mind wandered to the pilots he had known, the engineers who had built these machines with hope in their hands. Now hope was a fragile relic, buried under twisted steel and corrosion. Cale's implants pulsed faintly, a reminder that he was neither fully human nor fully machine. His heartbeat synced with the weak hum of a nearby drone, an unintentional duet between man and metal. In the silence, he recognized a bitter truth. Survival wasn't victory. Survival was merely an echo of what had been lost, a fragile imitation of life amidst ruins. The hub's entrance opened to a courtyard where more drones lay scattered, their frames melting into the overgrowth. Kale stepped over them, careful not to disturb the delicate balance between decay and motion. Somewhere in the distance, the city whispered, a low hum of past activity, of systems that once thrived, now merely remembered in circuits and bone. A soft vibration coursed through his implants, an old alarm system still partially active. Kale froze. His hands brushed against the metal ribs of a collapsed drone. The pulse ran through him, a reminder that even here, the machines were not entirely dead. He could feel them, fragments of commands, echoes of artificial loyalty that mirrored his own human frailty. The courtyard was empty, but the weight of memory pressed down on him. He saw flashes, a drone lifting gracefully into the air, formations of machines moving with precision, the city alive with purpose. And beneath it all, the haunting realization: this order was gone, irretrievably lost, leaving only iron bones and the ghosts of trust. Kale pressed on, drawn toward the heart of the hub, where a control chamber had survived the collapse. The glass was shattered, wires dangling like vines from a mechanical jungle. Panels flickered, some still alive, casting intermittent light on the walls. Each flicker revealed fragments, maps, schematics, the faint outlines of battles long erased from memory. He traced his fingers across a cracked console. Data residue lingered, faint lines of code that once dictated life and death for entire fleets. Kale felt a shiver. The machines had obeyed without question. They had followed orders, even as the world around them crumbled. And yet, here he was, human, questioning, faltering, burdened with the weight of both flesh and conscience. The courtyard beyond seemed to hold its breath. Shadows shifted as if moved by remembered routines. And Kale understood. The machines had become mirrors. Their rust and sparks reflected his own fractured existence. Survival, loyalty, purpose, all were fragile constructs shattered by time and by the collapse. He stepped back from the console, the ache in his joints flaring. Rain pattered on the exposed roof, washing the metal bones in silver. Kale's gaze lingered on a drone partially upright, its sensors still flickering. He knew it would never fly again. He knew none of these machines could return to what they were. Yet the memory of their trust stayed with him, heavy in his chest, mingling with the scars of flesh and metal. And in that quiet, rain-soaked ruin, Kale realized that the struggle wasn't against enemies or machines, it was against the erosion of purpose itself, the slow dissolution of everything that had once mattered. The city around him groaned under the weight of emptiness. Neon flickered weakly, a dying heartbeat in the ruins. Kale's eyes met the skeletal frames scattered like forgotten prayers, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel, not anger, not sorrow, but a quiet, terrible understanding. Iron bones lay everywhere, but even in decay they spoke. They whispered of trust, of loyalty, of battles fought and lost. And Kale, human and machine, listened. Kale wandered deeper into the hub, the air thick with the smell of ozone and rust. His footsteps echoed in vast empty halls, bouncing off steel walls scarred by battle. Broken drones littered the floors, limbs twisted in angles no human joint could survive. Yet, in their silence, There was a rhythm, a memory of the coordination they once held. He paused beside a half-buried mech, its cockpit cracked open like a skull. Inside, faint data pulses flickered weakly, tiny sparks dancing along frayed wires. Cale reached out, running a gloved hand over the console. The machine recognized his touch, sensors flaring briefly, as if remembering the bond they had shared. A bitter nostalgia clenched his chest. Outside, neon light filtered through shattered windows, casting fractured reflections across the room. Cale's shadow merged with the drones, creating strange silhouettes. A man stitched to machines, a hybrid of flesh, steel, and memory. He remembered the war, the endless nights of synchrony, the trust that had once been absolute. And he mourned it. The machines had been faithful. Humans had been weaker. A distant metallic clang echoed. Cale stiffened, scanning the hall. A loose panel had shifted, settling with the sound of a heartbeat. He could not tell if it was another scavenger or just the building reminding him it still lived, somehow. His implants vibrated softly, syncing with the residual power flowing through exposed circuits. Each hum was a fragment of past commands, a ghostly whisper of purpose. He moved cautiously toward the central chamber. The floorboards creaked beneath his weight, and with every step, Cale felt the weight of history pressing down. The central hub had once been a cathedral of machines, the place where loyalty was written in code and obedience flowed like a sacred river. Now, it was a mausoleum. Amid the wreckage, Cale noticed a group of drones partially upright, their frames shaking with the rhythm of some half-forgotten directive. He approached one, kneeling beside its cracked shell. The machine's sensor flickered to life, casting a pale glow onto his face. He saw in that light not a machine, but a reflection of himself, a survivor bound to broken purpose. Cale's hands hovered over the mech's interface. Memories surged unbidden. The first time he had trusted the machines, the laughter of soldiers as drones hovered above, the final mission that had ended in smoke and fire. The weight of failure pressed on him, heavier than the fused metal in his arms. The drones twitched, circuits sparking, and Cale realized the truth he had tried to ignore. They were not just machines. They were vessels of history, containers of what had been. To destroy them would be to erase fragments of myself, fragments of the world he had known. Yet to leave them meant to carry the burden of ghosts. A sudden vibration in the hall made him flinch. Cale's instincts, honed through years of combat, screamed at him. Shadows shifted at the periphery, but when he turned, there was nothing. Only the faint hum of dying circuits, the whisper of memories pressed into metal and bone. He pressed forward to the chamber's heart. Panels lit intermittently, revealing holographic remnants of past operations, formations, battle schematics, patrol routes. Each image flickered and died, leaving only the memory of motion. Cale absorbed it all, the patterns, the coordination, the discipline. His chest ached with the absence of what once had been. In a corner, a lone drone tried to lift itself from the rubble. Its joints groaned, sparks flying with each movement. Cale watched, transfixed. The effort was futile, yet there was determination in its flawed motion. He felt a kinship, understanding the relentless desire to rise despite the certainty of failure. Time stretched. Cale wandered through the remains, tracing the outlines of lost purpose. Each machine spoke silently. Loyalty, duty, trust, concepts now foreign in a city of ruin. And with every step, he felt more entwined with their memory, the line between human and machine thinning, fragile as rusted steel. A sudden crash from above made the hall tremble. Dust fell like rain. Cale looked up. A section of ceiling had collapsed, exposing the sky. Neon clouds reflected the city's decay, the remnants of a civilization that once revered precision, now surrendered to entropy. He crouched beside a half-functioning drone. Its servos twitched sporadically, futile attempts at flight. Cale rested a hand on its frame. For a moment, he let himself imagine it lifting, obeying, returning to its purpose. The illusion shattered quickly, leaving only the cold truth. The city had no saviors, no order, only echoes of what had been. Cale's gaze swept the hall, lingering on the scattered corpses of machines. The memory of their synchronization haunted him, and yet, amid the ruin, he realized a flicker of something dangerous and beautiful: resilience. The drones had adapted in their way, even in death. And perhaps he could too. Rain tapped against the broken roof. Cale exhaled slowly, a quiet resolve settling over him. The machines were gone, their iron bones a testament to what had been. But he was still here. He carried the weight of memory, both human and mechanical, forward into the empty streets beyond. The city whispered again, not with command, not with order, but with the quiet acknowledgement of survival. Cale's pulse synced with the rhythm of fallen metal, and for the first time he understood. Purpose is not given, it is reclaimed. Cale stepped into the open courtyard, rain washing over him, streaking dirt and rust across his face. The scattered remains of drones stretched before him like a graveyard, each frame an echo of loyalty lost. The city hummed softly, neon flickers blending with the rhythmic drip of water, creating a cadence that seemed almost alive. He knelt beside a half-buried machine, its sensors dim, wires exposed like veins. The drone's frame shivered with the faint pulse of residual energy. Cale traced the metal, feeling the vibrations resonate through his gloves, a ghost of the movements it once made. A memory of flight came unbidden, formations cutting through fog, engines singing in unison, trust embedded in every movement. The thought struck him sharply. The machines had been extensions of himself, reflections of his own discipline and loyalty. Without them, he was raw, unguarded, incomplete. Yet their absence offered clarity. The city had been built on structures of order, of reliance on what now lay as iron bones beneath his hands. Cale understood that he could not rebuild the past, but he could carry its lessons forward, as fragments, as guides for what remained. A spark flickered from a nearby console. Dust swirled in the neon light, forming ghostly shapes. Cale rose, scanning the courtyard. Broken drones lay in the shadows, some twitching in futile attempts at motion. Their persistence was almost human, a defiance against decay. He wondered if he was any different, if his will could endure like theirs, or if he too would crumble under the weight of memory and loss. He moved toward the largest frame, a drone that had once led squadrons into battle. Its chassis was twisted, circuits burned through, and yet, when Cale placed his hand on it, he felt a resonance, a hum that traveled through metal and flesh alike. It was a call to witness, to honor, not to revive. He whispered nothing. There was no need. The drone seemed to understand. The wind carried echoes of old alarms, faint mechanical cries that no longer commanded obedience. Cale listened, recognizing in them not danger, but stories of the past. The trust between man and machine, the inevitability of decay, the fragile beauty of purpose. A lesson hidden in rust and wires, simple yet profound. He crouched, examining the iron bones one last time. Each dent, each crack, each charred panel spoke of battles fought, of choices made, of trust given and broken. The city around him seemed to lean closer, watching him, waiting for a decision he had already made. Cale understood that survival was not enough. He needed to carry memory, not just his own, but that of everything that had shaped him. A spark flickered from a nearby console. Dust swirled in the neon light, forming ghostly shapes. Cale rose, scanning the courtyard. Broken drones lay in the shadows, some twitching in futile attempts at motion. Their persistence was almost human, a defiance against decay. He wondered if he was any different, if his will could endure like theirs, or if he too would crumble under the weight of memory and loss. He moved toward the largest frame, a drone that had once led squadrons into battle. Its chassis was twisted, circuits burned through, and yet, when Cale placed his hand on it, he felt a resonance, a hum that traveled through metal and flesh alike. It was a call to witness, to honor, not to revive. He whispered nothing. There was no need. The drone seemed to understand. The wind carried echoes of old alarms, faint mechanical cries that no longer commanded obedience. Cale listened, recognizing in them not danger, but stories of the past. The trust between man and machine, the inevitability of decay, the fragile beauty of purpose. A lesson hidden in rust and wires, simple yet profound. He crouched, examining the iron bones one last time. Each dent, each crack, each charred panel spoke of battles fought, of choices made, of trust given and broken. The city around him seemed to lean closer, watching him, waiting for a decision he had already made. Cale understood that survival was not enough. He needed to carry memory, not just his own, but that of everything that had shaped him. Rain continued to fall, washing the courtyard in silver streaks. Cale felt the pulse of his implants, syncing with the sporadic sparks from the drones. Each flicker was a reminder that life, mechanical or human, persisted even in fragments. Purpose was not dead. It had merely shifted, waiting for those who remembered to reclaim it. He moved to the exit, pausing to look back. The iron bones lay still, silent witnesses to a world that had moved on without them. Cale understood the fragility of order, the impermanence of control. Yet he felt something akin to hope, not for restoration, but for understanding, for the endurance of memory in any form. A low hum rose from a distant corner, faint yet insistent. Cale approached and found a small drone, flickering with energy, its sensors weak but alive. He reached out, feeling the vibration through his hand. There was no command here, no mission, only presence. A connection unspoken, a shared acknowledgement of survival. He straightened, shoulders stiff from the weight of history pressing upon him. The city sprawled ahead, broken and silent, but alive in fragments. Cale understood that he was no longer merely a survivor. He was a witness, a carrier of memory, both human and machine. His steps echoed with the ghosts of loyalty and trust, guiding him forward into the unknown streets beyond. As he walked into the misted avenues, the neon reflected in puddles, fractured yet beautiful. Cale did not look back. He could not rebuild what had been. But he could honor it, carry it, and perhaps in that act find a sliver of purpose amidst the ruins of iron and memory. The city sighed around him, a quiet acknowledgement of the past. And Cale, human fused with the echoes of machine, stepped into the rain, carrying iron bones and their stories within him, moving toward a future yet unwritten. Cale stepped into the open street, rain streaking neon reflections across the broken pavement. The city was quiet, save for the distant hum of failing circuits and the occasional drip of water from shattered rooftops. The drones lay around him like fallen soldiers, their iron bones half buried in grime, half lit by fractured light. He knelt beside one small, sparking frame. Its sensors flickered weakly, a heartbeat struggling against silence. Kael ran his gloved hand along its metal, feeling the pulse of residual energy. For a moment, the boundary between human and machine blurred. This was more than metal and circuits. It was memory, loyalty, fragments of a life that had once meant purpose. A faint spark from a nearby console drew his attention. He approached, brushing debris aside. The console flickered, showing fragments of past commands, patterns, and blueprints. Kael's pulse synced with the residual power humming through the hall. There was no restoration here, only echoes, reminders of discipline, coordination, and the fleeting beauty of purpose. He turned toward the streets ahead, the mist rising like smoke from a battlefield. Each step he took carried weight, not just from fused metal in his body or the memories he bore, but from the acknowledgement of what had been lost. The drones would not rise again. The city would not return to order. Only he remained to carry the memory of it all. Kael stepped forward, leaving the iron bones behind. Their stories clung to him, stitched into his mind and flesh. He carried them in each movement, each breath, a witness to what had been, and a guide for the uncertain path ahead. The city stretched before him, fractured, silent, alive in fragments of neon and memory. Rain-slicked streets reflected his shadow, elongated and fractured like the drones he left behind. Kael did not look back. He had walked among the iron bones and learned the truth. Loyalty and purpose may fade, but memory, once carried, can shape what remains. The neon flickered one last time above him, casting fractured light across wet pavement and debris. In the quiet, he understood. Survival was not enough, but memory, preserved and honored, could endure. And so he walked, carrying the weight of a city that had fallen, the hum of machines in his blood, and the uncertain promise of a future waiting to be claimed.